Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew, and we are continuing in Matthew 18. As we said last time, this is the Kingdom Sermon. This is the fourth of the 5 major sermons that we have in the Gospel of Matthew, and it's called the Kingdom Sermon because it's largely about getting along with each other in the kingdom. And so we're going to today read verses 7 through 14. He's just responded to their question about who is greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and showed them a small child, and said, you have to humble yourselves like this child. We talked about that last time. And then he warned against those who would put a stumbling block before children. And I think he's talking about children and also babes in the faith as well. And so let's read verses 7 through 14. Today Jesus is going to repurpose some things that he said elsewhere, which is what all preachers do, If you've got a good story, you've got a good, turn of phrase, a good illustration, it can be put to use in many ways, and that's what Jesus is doing here. Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks, for it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to that man through whom the stumbling block comes. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than having 2 hands or feet and be cast into eternal fire. If your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and throw it away from you. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than having 2 eyes to be cast into the hell of fire. See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that their angels in heaven continually behold the face of my Father. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep, one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go and search for the one that is straying? And if it turns out that he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 which have not gone astray. Thus it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that any one of these little ones should perish. I think it's clear that he's talking about the children, but also about those who are very young and vulnerable in faith. Last time when we talked about verses 1 through 6, we identified the notion of vulnerability, that one thing that a child knows is that they are a child and they need adults to take care of them. And it's that vulnerability that continues to be the theme throughout these verses. He says stumbling blocks are going to come. This is inevitable. Don't you be the one through whom they come. Don't you be the one that causes someone, some child or some child in the faith, to become jaded, to become disappointed, to lose faith. That better not be you, Jesus says. And those extreme terms that he used back in the Sermon on the Mount, in the general context of sin, but the specific context of sexual sin, of adultery, fornication, he now uses for being a stumbling block. If something about you causes you to stumble, get rid of it. Period. Get rid of it and throw it far away from you. It's not worth your soul. As he just said, what will you give in exchange for your soul in the last chapter? Whatever you need to do to get rid of the thorns in your life, to bring up an illustration from a previous sermon, the parable sermon, Matthew 13, you do that. You take whatever extreme measures are necessary to get rid of the stumbling block, because God wants you to be saved. God wants everyone to be saved. And just like he does in Luke 16 in the parables of finding and losing, ultimately the person who is seeking is God himself. And God doesn't want any of us to be lost. And God takes it very seriously when we are, and God will take very seriously the one who causes the straying to begin with. And that's the point that Jesus is making in this passage. So in the kingdom sermon, when he talks about us getting along with each other in the kingdom, he begins by saying, take very seriously the spiritual well-being of yourself and of the ones around you, particularly those of you who are less mature, who are thus vulnerable. Because if you don't, God knows, and God takes that very seriously. And we should too. We should too. We should not feel like we have the luxury just to knock heads and take names because we happen to be right on a certain issue. As Jesus pointed out in the parable of the tares, God takes collateral damage very seriously. You can't just say, well, if you're going to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. No. God says, don't break those eggs. Don't break them at all. And whatever you have in your own life that's causing you to feel that way, it's causing you to stumble, you get rid of it, and you get rid of it now, and you throw it far away from you. Okay. We're going to pick up with verse 15 about what we do when some brother sins against us and offends us. And there is a few verses that really describe due process. We'll talk about that next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.